Hi friends, close your eyes for just a moment. Just close them. I want you to take one breath, one slow, deep breath, in through your nose, hold it, and let it go. Now, before you open your eyes, I want you to ask yourself something. I want you to ask yourself this one question. I want you to ask yourself this one question. And I want you to be honest. Brutally, uncomfortably, beautifully honest. When was the last time you were fully here? Not in your head, replaying something that happened 3 days ago. Not in your chest, carrying that quiet anxiety about something that hasn't even happened. Not on your phone, not in someone else's life, not in yesterday, not in tomorrow. But here, right here, in your body, in this breath, in this moment. Open your eyes, because I want to tell you something that nobody told me for the longest time. Something that changed my life so quietly, so gently, that I almost missed it. And I say almost because one ordinary Tuesday morning, in the most unremarkable kitchen, in the most unremarkable moment, I finally heard it. And when I did, everything shifted. What I want to tell you is this: you are already where you need to be, not where you think you should be, not where your parents expected you to be, not where your Instagram feed suggests you should be by now, but exactly, precisely, perfectly where you need to be. And the reason I know that, the reason I can say that with absolute certainty is because the most profound journey any human being ever takes is not outward. It is not across oceans or up mountains or into boardrooms or onto stages. It is inward. And the vehicle for that journey is something so simple, so free, so available to every single one of you in this room and watching this, that when I tell you what it is, part of you is going to resist it. Part of you is going to say, that's it. That's the secret. That's what all the fuss is about. And I want to say to that part of you, yes, that's exactly it. Mindfulness meditation. 2 words, simple words, old words, words that have been passed down from teacher to student for thousands of years, words that monks have whispered in mountain monasteries, half whispered in mountain. Words that veterans have used to survive the echoing silences after war. Words that mothers have discovered in the exhausted dark of 3 in the morning, holding a crying baby, finding peace in the simple act of breathing. Words that CEOs and athletes and artists and ordinary people like you and me have used to come back to themselves when the world has pulled them in 100 directions at once. And today, I want to give you those words. Not as a concept, not as a concept, not as a philosophy, but as a practice. A real living, breathing practice that you can begin today, that you can begin right now, in this seat, in this moment, with nothing but the air in your lungs and the willingness to pay attention. But before I teach you the how, I need to tell you the why. And the why, my friends, starts with a story. My story. And I promise you, it is not a glamorous one. I grew up in a house full of noise. Not the beautiful kind of noise, not the noise of laughter and music and joy, though there was some of that too, but the heavy kind. The kind of noise that fills the spaces between words, the arguments at the dinner table, the silence that followed, the sound of a door closing too hard, the kind of noise that child absorbs like a sponge, quietly, steadily, without knowing what to do with it. I was an anxious kid. I don't think anybody used that word back then. In that house, in that neighborhood, we didn't talk about anxiety. We talked about being sensitive, being too much, needing to toughen up. And so I did what a lot of anxious kids do. I tried to toughen up. I built a wall around the noise inside me, brick by brick, year by year, until I was a teenager with this fortress inside my chest and no idea what was living behind the walls. And here's the thing about walls. They keep things out, yes, but they also keep things in. Asking your mind to stop thinking is like asking your heart to stop beating. It is not the point. The point is not to empty your mind. The point is to notice that your mind is full. To see the thoughts as thoughts, not as truth, not as commands, not as the totality of who you are, but as events. Mental events, things that arise, and if you let them pass, a thought arises. You notice it, you don't grab it, you don't fight it, you don't follow it down the rabbit hole of meaning and implication and story. You just see it. And then gently, like turning a ship with a small movement of the wheel, you come back. Back to your breath, back to your body, back to now. That return, that gentle, persistent, humble return to the present moment. That is the practice, that is the whole practice. And every time you return, you are not failing. You are succeeding. You are doing exactly what the practice asks of you. Every return is a rep. Every return is a bicep curl for your brain. Every return builds the muscle of attention, the capacity for presence, the ability to find that space between stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl talked about. And here is the miracle of that muscle. It doesn't just work when you're meditating, it works in your life. It works in the moments that matter. It works when your partner says something that stings, and instead of firing back immediately, you feel that space open up just slightly, just enough, and you choose your words. It works when the anxiety spikes at 2 in the morning, and instead of fighting it or feeding it, you can just breathe with it, be with it, be with it, let it be there without letting it dry. It works when life falls apart, as life will do, and you can stand in the middle of the falling apart and still find your feet. That is what you are building. That is what this simple, free, available to everyone practice is building in you. Let me tell you about a woman named Sarah. Sarah was 38 years old when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was a mother. She was a teacher. She was a person who had spent her entire adult life being strong, being capable, being the person other people leaned on. And suddenly, overnight, her world changed in ways she could not have predicted and could not control. The treatment was brutal. The fear was constant. The uncertainty was a physical weight she carried in her chest every single day. She told me she felt like she was drowning, not just in the illness and the treatment, but in her own mind. Because when the body is fighting something, the mind joins the war. And the mind, unlike the body, has no off switch. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat. She would wake at 3 in the morning, mind screaming, and lie there alone with it. Because she didn't want to wake her family, she didn't want anyone to see how scared she was. She had spent so long being the strong one that she had forgotten how to just be the human one. A nurse at a cancer center introduced her to mindfulness. A simple program, 8 weeks, 30 minutes a day. Sarah told me her first reaction was mild offense. She was fighting cancer. She didn't have time to sit and breathe. She had things to do, things to worry about, things to plan. But she was desperate enough to try. And she described it to me this way. She said, I didn't expect it to take away the fear, and it didn't. Fear was still there, but something changed in my relationship with the fear. Before mindfulness, the fear was the whole room. It was everything. I was inside it, and it was inside me, and I couldn't tell where I ended, the fear began. After a while with mindfulness, the fear was still there, but it was like I could see it from the outside. Like it was a wave and I was the ocean. It could still knock me over sometimes. But I knew I was bigger than it. She finished her treatment. She is well. And she told me that the practice she began in the darkest period of her life, she has never stopped. What is complicated is the consistent, humble, patient doing of it. Because the mind will resist. Let me be honest with you about this. In the beginning, the mind will absolutely resist. Your mind has been running at full speed for years, probably decades, and you are asking it to slow down and be still. That is not nothing. That is a significant ask. Some days you will sit down to meditate and your mind will be relatively quiet and the practice will feel effortless. And you will think, I've got this. And the next day you will sit down and your mind will be like a kindergarten classroom at recess. And you will think, I've lost it. I'm back to zero. You are not back to zero. There is no zero. There is only the practice. The quiet, persistent, humble practice of showing up again and again and choosing to return to yourself. Pema Chodron, the great American Buddhist teacher, says this. She says, each time you find yourself scattered, that's the moment. That's the real moment of the practice, not the quiet moments when everything is easy. The moment you notice you've been lost in thought and you return to the breath, that is the fundamental act of mindfulness. That is the muscle being built. The getting lost is not the failure. The getting lost is the exercise. The returning is the win. Say that again to yourself. The returning is the win. Every single time you notice you've wandered and you come back, you win. You are exercising that most fundamental of human capacities. The capacity to wake up inside your own life. Now, I want to talk about something that I think is essential, and that gets overlooked in a lot of conversations about mindfulness. I want to talk about why this is so hard for so many of us in the modern world. Not because we are broken, not because we are wrong, but because we have been trained, carefully and systematically and profitably trained, to be exactly the opposite of mindful. Think about how the attention economy works. Every app, every platform, every screen you interact with has been engineered by some of the most brilliant minds in the world with one singular purpose. to capture your attention and hold it as long as possible. Because attention is currency. Attention is product. Your attention, the most precious and personal thing you possess, is what is being bought and sold and traded every second you spend scrolling. And the way they capture it is by exploiting the exact mechanism that mindfulness is trying to help you understand. The mind's tendency to be hijacked by novelty, by outrage, by comparison, by the dopamine hit of a like, a comment, a notification, by the infinite scroll that never resolves, that always promises one more interesting thing just around the corner. We have been quite literally trained out of the capacity for presence. And this is not accidental, and this is not neutral. Because a mind that cannot be present cannot be free. A mind that is always somewhere else, always chasing the next stimulation, always reacting instead of responding, that mind is a mind that can be sold things, a mind that can be manipulated. A mind that is exhausted enough and anxious enough and disconnected enough to believe that the next product, the next upgrade, the next external thing will finally give it the peace it is desperately looking for. Mindfulness is, among other things, an act of resistance. It is a radical act to say, for these 10 minutes, nothing outside me is more important than what is happening inside me. It is a radical act to say, I am not a product. I am not a consumer. I am not a pair of eyeballs to be monetized. I am a human being with an interior life, with feelings that deserve to be felt, with thoughts that deserve to be examined, with a body that deserves to be inhabited. When you meditate, you are taking back something that has been slowly, systematically taken from you. You are coming home. I want to tell you about another person. His name is Marcus. Purely, simply, unconditionally is. And every time you come back to it, you come back to that part of yourself that is beyond all the noise. The part that is just alive, just here, just breathing. Now, I want to talk about the science. Because I know that for some of you, the stories are beautiful, but you want the data. You want the evidence. And I love you for that because the evidence is extraordinary. In 1979, a molecular biologist at the University of Massachusetts named John Kabat-Zinn developed a program called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, or MBSR. It was an 8-week program designed to help people dealing with chronic pain and stress. He took the ancient meditation practices he had learned from his own teachers and stripped them of their religious context, presenting them as a secular, practical, evidence-based intervention. The results were remarkable. Participants showed significant reductions in anxiety and depression. They showed increased ability to cope with pain. They showed improvements in sleep, immune function, and overall well-being. And they maintained these improvements months and even years after the program ended. This was the beginning of an explosion of research that has now produced thousands of scientific studies on mindfulness. And the findings, taken together, are quietly extraordinary. Studies at Harvard University found that 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation actually changed the physical structure of the brain. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, the part responsible for the fight or flight response, the part that fires when you're anxious or stressed or threatened, became measurably smaller in regular meditators. Smaller. The brain's anxiety center literally shrank. And meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, focus, emotional regulation, and conscious awareness became thicker, more dense, more active. Think about it. A simple free practice done for 30 minutes a day over 8 weeks changed the physical architecture of the brain. Not metaphorically changed, not felt better in abstract terms, changed structurally, measurably. We used to think the adult brain was fixed, that after a certain age you had the brain you had, and that was that. We know now that the brain is neuroplastic. It is constantly reshaping itself in response to how you use it. Every experience, every repeated thought pattern, every habit changes the brain, for better or worse. If you spend your days in anxious, reactive, scattered, distracted mental states, your brain becomes better anxious, reactive, scattered, distracted mental states. You literally wire yourself for anxiety, for reactivity, for that exhausted, nowhere feeling. And if you spend even a small portion of your days in calm, focused, present, non-judgmental awareness, your brain becomes better at that. You wire yourself for equanimity, for focus, for presence, for that feeling of being fully, genuinely, exquisitely alive. You are not stuck. That is the most important thing I can tell you from the science. You are not stuck. The brain you have today is not the brain you have to have tomorrow. Every meditation session, every mindful breath, every gentle return from distraction is literally changing your brain. You are building a better mind, one breath at a time. Isn't that extraordinary? Isn't that one of the most remarkable things? That the answer to so many of the problems of the modern world, this simple, ancient, available practice, is also something that science now confirms changes you at the neurological level, changes you in a way that lasts, that carries forward, that compounds over time. Chien. Because here's what happens with consistent practice. Here's what the long-term meditators show us. After months and years of practice, the skills you develop on the cushion, the capacity for presence, the ability to notice thoughts without being hijacked by them, the access to that space between stimulus and response. Those skills stop being something you do during meditation and start being something you are throughout the day. You start living mindfully, not just meditating mindfully. You start having conversations where you are actually present, where you are actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak, where you can hear what is underneath the words, including your own words. You start eating food and tasting it, walking and feeling the ground under your feet, looking at the sky and actually seeing it, being with the people you love and actually being there, not performing presence, not checking a box called quality time, but genuinely, fully being there. And this is, I believe, the deepest gift of the practice, not the anxiety reduction, though that is a gift, not the improved sleep and focus and immune function, though those are gifts. The deepest gift is this: your life becomes your life, not something that is happening to you while you are somewhere else in your head. Not a story you are watching from outside, but yours, happening now, in real time, in full color, in all its messy, beautiful, fleeting, irretrievable aliveness. Because here is the thing about time. Here is the thing that every person who has ever lost someone they love has had to reckon with. Life is not long. I know it can feel long. I know the days can feel like they go on forever. I know Monday morning can feel like it will never end. But the years go fast, terrifyingly fast. You blink and the children are grown. You blink and the parents are gone. You blink and the friends are scattered across different cities, different countries, different chapters of their lives. You blink and you are standing in the middle of your life asking where it went. And the tragedy is not that time passes. Time passing is not a tragedy. The tragedy is all the moments you were there, but not there. The moments you had but couldn't feel. The breakfast table where everyone was physically present and nobody was actually there. The beautiful afternoon that you spent somewhere inside your head. The person who was trying to reach you and you were too lost in your thoughts to be reached. Mindfulness is the practice of being where you are, of not wasting the only thing you actually have, which is now, not yesterday. You cannot live in yesterday. Yesterday is a thought and not tomorrow. Tomorrow is a thought. The only place you can actually be alive is here, in this breath, in this moment, in this now, in this now. I know that sounds almost too simple to be profound, but sit with it for a moment. Actually sit with it. The only place you can be alive is now. Which means every moment you are somewhere else in your mind. You are not living. You are thinking about living. You are planning living or regretting living or worrying about living, but you are not doing it. And how much of your life has been spent in thought about life, rather than in life itself? That question is not meant to make you sad. It is not meant to make you regret. Because regret is just another way of not being here. That question is meant to make you hungry. Hungry for your own life. Hungry for the fullness of it. Hungry for the feeling of being so fully present in a moment that time seems to slow and everything becomes vivid. And you feel inexplicably, completely. Okay, that hunger is what brings us to the practice. And the practice, day by day, breath by breath, return by return, gives us more of those moments. More of those moments when you are actually inside your life. When you are actually you, fully you, present and awake and real. Let me tell you about a man named David. David was 53 years old when he had a heart attack. A mild one as heart attacks go, but still. He survived. He recovered. He went back to his life. But he came back to a life he didn't entirely recognize. Not because it had changed, but because he had. He told me that lying in that hospital bed, watching the machines that were measuring his heartbeat, he had a thought. A simple thought. He thought, that machine is measuring whether I am alive. But am I alive? He couldn't answer it. Because being alive to him had started to feel like it just meant moving, just going, just doing all the things and getting through all the days and making it to the weekend and making it to the holiday and making it to retirement and making it through all the making it. But that wasn't life. That was survival. That was endurance. That was a long, impressive, exhausting act of making it through. He wanted more. He didn't know what more looked like. But he wanted it. His cardiac rehabilitation program included a mindfulness component. He was skeptical. He was a numbers man, a practical man, a man who had spent his career in logistics. He liked things that could be measured and planned. He didn't see how sitting and breathing was going to give him what he was looking for. But he tried. And slowly, over weeks and months, something shifted. He started noticing things, all things. The smell of coffee in the morning, the specific quality of light on a Sunday afternoon, the feeling of his dog's fur under his hand, the sound of his daughter's laughter in the other room, the small things that had always been there, that he had always rushed past in the urgency of getting to the next thing. He said, it was like someone turned the contrast upon my life. Like everything got a little brighter, a little more real, a little more worth paying attention to. He didn't change his job, though he eventually retired earlier than he planned. He didn't change his city or his relationships or the material structure of his life. What changed was what he was bringing to it. The quality of his presence, the fullness of his attention. And he said those years after his heart attack, the years that he had been afraid were the beginning of the end. Those turned out to be the best years of his life. Not in spite of everything that happened. Because of it. Because his heart, quite literally, had forced him to be present. Be present. You don't need a heart attack to learn to be present. I am saying that as clearly and directly as I can. You don't need a diagnosis or a loss or a catastrophe to bring you into your life. The catastrophe is not required. The alarm does not need to go off. You can choose to wake up. Right now, you can choose to wake up. Right this morning, today, you can choose to say, I am not going to wait for life to force me to be here. I am going to choose to be here. I am going to give myself the gift of my own presence. And you do that by beginning a practice. A simple, humble, consistent practice of sitting down, closing your eyes, taking a breath and coming home. Start with 5 minutes. Just 5. Before you check your phone in the morning, before the day grabs you and runs, before the noise begins, just 5 minutes of sitting with your own breath. You don't need an app. You don't need a teacher. You don't need special clothes or a special room or a special time. You need a seat and a breath and a willingness to return again and again to the present moment. And if you want guidance, there is beautiful guidance available. There are teachers and programs and yes, apps that can support a practice. Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, the work of Tara Brach and Jack Cornfield and Sharon Salzberg, all of these offer generous, accessible, evidence-based guidance. But don't let the search for the perfect method be the thing that stops you from starting. Start now. Start imperfectly. Start messily. Start with a busy mind and a skeptical heart and a life that feels too complicated for simplicity. Start anyway. Because here's what I know about. Beginnings. The beginning is not the practice. The beginning is just the decision that the practice matters. And from that decision, everything else grows slowly, inconsistently, beautifully. I want to talk about something else now. I want to talk about self-compassion. Because I think mindfulness without self-compassion is like a house without a foundation. The structure can exist, but it won't hold. Self-compassion is the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a good friend in a moment of difficulty. It sounds straightforward. In practice, it is one of the most radical things most people ever attempt, because most of us are not kind to ourselves. Most of us have an inner voice that, if we heard it speaking to a friend, we would be horrified. That relentless critic. That voice that says you're not good enough, not smart enough, not thin enough, not successful enough, not calm enough, not together enough. That voice that shows up in the gap between who you are and who you think you should be and fills that gap with contempt. Mindfulness makes that voice visible. When you start paying attention to your inner landscape, one of the first things you discover is just how unkind the landscape is, just how constant the self-criticism is. Just how much of your mental real estate is occupied by judgment of yourself and as a direct consequence of the world around you. And mindfulness practice teaches you to notice the critical voice the way you notice any other thought with a certain gentle curiosity. Oh, there's that voice again. There's the voice that says, I'm not doing this right. There's the voice that says, I'm not enough. Just noticing it rather than believing it. And over time, with practice and with the addition of explicit self compassion exercises, you can begin to change your relationship with that voice. Not silence it, maybe, but soften it. Introduce another voice. Introduce another voice. A kinder one. The voice you would use with a struggling friend. The voice that says, hey, this is hard. You're doing your best. You are worthy of care. You don't have to be perfect to be enough. You are already enough. That voice exists in you. I know it does, because you know how to use it. You've used it with people you love. Maybe with your children, or your friends, or strangers in moments of grace. You know how to be kind. You know the sound of it. The practice is turning that sound toward yourself. This is not narcissism. This is not self-indulgence. This is not weakness. The research of Dr. Kristen Neff, who has spent 20 years studying self-compassion, shows that people who practice self-compassion are more emotionally resilient, more motivated to improve themselves, more compassionate toward others, and less likely to be depressed or anxious than people who rely on self-criticism as a motivational strategy. Self-compassion is not a reward for success. It is a foundation for growth. You cannot build a sustainable life on the foundation of self-contempt. You can build something impressive, maybe. You can achieve things, maybe. But it will cost you everything. And at some point, something will crack. The most sustainable life, the most joyful life, the most genuinely successful life is built on the foundation of kindness to yourself, of treating your own inner world with the same care and attention that you bring to the things and people that matter to you. And mindfulness is the gateway to that kindness, because you cannot be kind to something you cannot see. You cannot care for something you are running from. The practice of sitting quietly and turning your attention inward, even when what you find there is uncomfortable, is the practice of saying to yourself, I see you. I'm not running from you. I am here. I am here with you. Whatever is here is allowed to be here. That is the most healing thing. The most transformative thing. Not trying to fix yourself or improve yourself or overcome yourself. Just being with yourself. Fully, honestly, kindly being with yourself. There's a phrase I love from the Buddhist tradition. It is this. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Those words are attributed to the Buddha. So the Buddha, and whether or not he said them exactly, they contain a truth that I believe is foundational to a human life. You deserve your own love. Not someday when you've fixed everything and achieved everything and become everything you think you should be. Now, today, as you are, incomplete and struggling and beautiful and doing your best, you deserve your own love. Now, I want to bring this back to the practice because I have talked about the why extensively and with love. And now I want to make sure that you leave here or finish watching this with a clear, simple, doable practice in your hands. The foundational practice is the breath meditation I described earlier. Sit, breathe, notice thoughts, return, repeat. But mindfulness is not limited to formal meditation. One of the most powerful things about this practice is that it can be woven into the texture of ordinary life, that every moment of every day can become an opportunity for presence. Here is what I call informal mindfulness practice, and I encourage you to explore all of it. Mindful eating. The next time you eat a meal, try eating the first few bites without doing anything else. No phone, no television, no reading, no conversation, just eating. Feeling the texture of the food, tasting it, really tasting it, really tasting it. Noticing when you are full, which is actually surprisingly difficult for most people who eat while distracted. Mindful walking. The next time you walk somewhere, even if it's just from the car to the front door, take a few steps with your full attention on the physical experience of walking. The sensation of your foot on the ground, the movement of your body through space, the air on your face. Just for a few steps, just for a breath. Mindful listening. The next time you are in a conversation, practice actually listening, not preparing your response while the other person is talking. Not half listening while simultaneously thinking about something else, but actually fully listening to the words, listening to the tone, listening to what is not being said, Be fully there with that person in that conversation. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give another human being. Your full, genuine, undivided attention. In a world where attention is so fractured and so distracted and so monetized, to give someone the whole of your attention is an act of profound love. Mindful pausing. Build into your day a few moments of deliberate pause. Before you open your laptop in the morning, take 3 breaths. Before you start the car, take a moment to notice how your body feels. Before you walk into a meeting or a difficult conversation, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what do I want to bring into this room? What kind of person do I want to be in this moment? These pauses seem small. They are not small. They are the hinge points of your day. Hinge points of your day. They are the moments in which you choose rather than react. They are the moments in which you remember yourself rather than losing yourself. And over time, these moments of remembering become more frequent. The space between stimulus and response, that space that Viktor Frankl called the source of our freedom, grows wider, more accessible, more reliable. You become gradually, unmistakably, someone who is more awake, more alive, more present in the only life you have. Let me tell you about something that happened to me a few years ago. Something that I think of as the moment I really understood what this practice was for. I was in a period of significant difficulty. Things were hard in a way that felt overwhelming. I was sitting with my practice one morning, as I do every morning, and I was not having a peaceful meditation. My mind was a storm. Worry and grief and uncertainty, and that particular flavor of fear that comes when you cannot see the way forward. And at some point in the sitting, instead of trying to calm the storm, instead of fighting it, or fixing it, or willing it to be different, I just let it be there. I just sat in the middle of it, breathing, noticing. Here's the fear, here's the worry, here's the grief. Just letting it all be present without judgment, without the additional suffering of wanting it to be different. And something happened that surprised me. In the middle of the storm, I found something quiet. Not the absence of the storm. The storm was still there. But beneath it, underneath all the noise and movement and turbulence, there was the stillness, this quiet, steady aliveness. This basic okayness that was not affected by any of it, that existed before the storm and would exist after it. It was, I think, what the contemplative traditions have been pointing toward for millennia. The place that cannot be touched by circumstance. The ground beneath the weather of the mind. The awareness that holds all experience but is not defined by any of it. Some traditions call it the witness. Some call it pure awareness. Some call it the true self. Some call it the soul. The name matters less than the experience. And the experience which I cannot give you, which you can only find for yourself, in your own sitting, in your own quiet, in your own returning, the experience is that you are more than your thoughts, more than your feelings, more than your circumstances. More than the story you have been telling about yourself. You are the space in which all of that happens. The sky in which the clouds move, the ocean in which the waves arise and fall. The awareness in which experience appears and disappears and disappears. And when you touch that, even briefly, even incompletely, even on a bad day in a messy meditation, something shifts. Something is known, not intellectually, not as information, but as experience, as a kind of homecoming. And you carry that knowing forward, not always consciously, not always clearly, but it is there, like a light that has been lit in a room. You may not always be looking directly at it. But the room is not the same as before it was lit. This is what the practice builds over time, over years, over a lifetime of returning. Not just stress reduction, not as better focus, but a relationship with yourself and with life that is fundamentally different. That is, I believe, the word I want, that is fundamentally free, free from the tyranny of the constant critic, free from the exhausting performance of a life lived for everyone else's judgment. Free from the past that has already happened and cannot be changed. Free from the future that has not yet arrived and may never be what you fear. Free to be here, now, in this moment, in this life. In this life. This is the promise of the practice. Not a life without difficulty. Not a life without grief or loss or hardship or failure. All of those will come. They come for everyone. They are woven into the fabric of a human life. But a life in which you meet those things differently. A life in which you stand in the difficulty with your feet on the ground and your breath in your body and your awareness as a companion, rather than an adversary. A life in which you can be in the storm without being the storm. And a life, perhaps most importantly, in which you do not miss the beauty, because the beauty is there. It is there. I promise you the beauty is there. In the most ordinary moments, in the light through a window, in the sound of rain, in the warmth of a hand, in the smell of coffee and the taste of bread and the sound of a child laughing, in the simple, staggering, unrepeatable fact of being alive, right now on this earth, in this body, in this time, the beauty is there. But you have to be there to see it. And that is what the practice gives you. Presence. The capacity to be where you are when you are there. The ability to inhabit your life. We are coming toward the end now, and I want to leave you with something real. Something that you can carry out of here. I want to say first that everything I have talked about today is available to you, all of it. Not some of it, to the people who are smart enough or calm enough or spiritual enough or together enough. All of it to all of you exactly as you are. The most powerful thing about mindfulness is its democracy. It asks nothing of you except your willingness to show up and pay attention. It does not care about your history. It does not care about your religion or lack of it. It does not care about what happened yesterday or what you think about yourself. It offers the same gift to everyone. The gift of this moment, the gift of now, and now is always accessible. No matter what is happening, no matter how loud the world is, no matter how chaotic the mind, underneath all of it, like bedrock beneath a river, there is this moment, there is this breath, there is this awareness. It is always here. It is always waiting. It is always home. I want to tell you what I would go back and tell my younger self. That anxious kid in the noisy house, building walls, not knowing what was living behind them. I would go back and I would sit down beside him and I would say this. You don't have to fix yourself. You are not broken. You do not need to be better before you deserve to be here. You are allowed to be exactly as you are, struggling and uncertain and full of noise, and still be worthy, still be enough, still be love, including by yourself. And I would teach him to breathe. I would teach him to sit still. Still. I would teach him that stillness is not emptiness, it is fullness. That quiet is not absence, it is presence. That being with yourself is not weakness. It is the bravest, most important thing you will ever do. I would teach him that the mind's chatter is not the truth, that thoughts are not commands, that feelings are not facts, that anxiety is not prophecy, that the past does not have to predict the future, and that the future, with all its uncertainty and possibility and terror and wonder, the future begins right here, in this breath, in this breath, in this moment of paying attention. I would teach him what I want to teach you today, that the most important journey you will ever take is not out there. It isn't here. It is the inward journey. The journey back to yourself, back to your breath, back to the quiet place beneath the noise. Back to the awareness that is always there, always steady, always home. That journey begins with one breath, just one, in through the nose. Hold it and let it go. Be here. Just for this moment, just for this breath. You have everything you need. You have always had everything you need. It has been here waiting in every quiet moment, in every breath, in every simple, ordinary, extraordinary moment of your life. Come home. The door is open. The light is on. You are not too late. You have never been too late. Just breathe. Just be here. Just be. And know that in being here, in choosing to be present in your one precious, irreplaceable life, you are doing something quietly, profoundly, beautifully brave. You are waking up. You are coming home. And I believe with everything I am that this changes everything. Not all at once, not perfectly, not without the days when you forget. When the noise wins, when you are somewhere else in your head again. That will happen. That will always happen. But you will also remember and you will return. And in the returning, again and again and again, you will build something that cannot be bought or stolen or lost. You will build a life that is truly yours, lived from the inside out, in full presence, in full awareness, in full color. One breath at a time. That's all it takes. That's all it ever takes. One breath right now. Thank you.